But no, it's nice to be back out with something. Now that's Oni, of course. Typically, as soon as the meal comes, he goes to the bathroom.
To wash up before he eats.
Yeah. But I guarantee you, as soon as something starts, he goes to the bathroom.
I wish I'd known. Because that's why I ran while you were on the phone.
I know, and I was just he could have done that while I was on the phone.
Took him with me.
Yeah, there you go.
So how many members are in the band?
From the original.
The original band and
2
presently.
and 5 altogether.
5 altogether?
Yeah.
Okay, here we go.
Thank you very much.
No problem. You just sit right next to him on the right there.
We're using the same mic. It's in Omni.
In Omni mode.
Yeah.
Omni mode.
NBI Broadcasting, Curtis Waller interviewing the Average White Band. It's a pleasure to meet you guys.
And to meet you.
Nice to be here.
Now, just we were talking about how many members in the band originally were.
Originally, we'd 6 members.
6 members in the band.
All
from-
Scottish.
Yeah. All very Scottish.
Right.
And of that particular lineup, 2 of us here are left: Donnie McIntyre and myself, Alan Gorey.
Okay. All right. And now presently there's.
5 people.
And the other 3 are, who are they?
They're Americans.
Americans.
Good heavens!
Gasp! Elliot Lewis on keyboards, bass, and vocals.
Pete Abbott on drums and percussion, and Fred Vigdor on saxophones. Freddie V.
Okay. So, do you have a copy of the album with you?
I do not.
You do not. No problem.
We'll get one sent up to you.
No, I have one. It's great. It's
Okay.
great. I was telling him. So the name of the new album is Soul Tattoo,
Yep.
Soul Tattoo, yes.
right? And it was released when did it-
June 10th,
June 10th
here in the States.
came out. And how are we working this project? Are we working it by singles or?
Well, they sent the album out to radio, and what came back was a lot of feedback on 2 cuts: Every Beat of My Heart,
Track 4.
track 4, right? Yep.
Killer.
And Back to Basics, track 2.
Mm-hmm.
And so what they've done is they've now put together a promo CD, which I guess they've just got ready now to send out to more stations. So they've narrowed it down to 2. Now they'll get the final feedback as to which one to go with. You know.
I think the entire project is a very listening project. Like I put it on, and like from beginning to end, it's like something that you listen to, like a whole music
Good.
project. So
Yeah.
I mean, that's my personal opinion. From being, somewhat familiar with your older stuff,
Right.
and listening to this today in terms of music that I appreciate, and then gearing to the service that I do,
Yeah.
it's an excellent project.
Well, thank you.
So like beginning to end, it was like nothing, was there where I kind of wanted to skip to the next track. I let the whole
That's
thing.
That's a good sign.
That's a
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah,
great
it's a
compliment
great
nowadays.
compliment, yeah.
Because so many albums that we all get, you really have to use that skip button a lot, which is a shame. You
Yeah.
know, there's a lot of fillers on records, and you realise, I think, why that is as a songwriter. It's because a lot of guys that they have 1 or 2 good songs in them, and instead of getting professional songwriters to come in and help with the dead spaces, they'd rather catch the royalties, write some lame piece of stuffing, and put it in there to fill between 2 tracks. And that's unfortunately what happens to a lot of albums. They'd rather write their own material, good or bad as it may be, than get a couple of heavyweights in to provide some real, substance, so you can have a project that works from start to finish. Because in the 70s, albums had to, or people wouldn't have bought them.
Well, they didn't have skip buttons in those days. The
old tone arm.
I think what you said was absolutely
it,
right.
yeah.
You play the album from
the
start to
skip
finish.
button then went.
So you tended to listen to the album as a whole, and that sort of concept's been a little bit lost these days.
Yeah.
Also, the format of CDs allows you to do anything, and it doesn't. It doesn't give you that sensation where you'd listen to an Isley Brothers album, and as soon as a track would finish, you'd know even the key that you could start singing the next one in the right key before it came on, because you're used to that sequence. Now, the sequence was there for a reason, because the artist meant it to be there for a reason.
Absolutely. And you notice with so many new reissues of old albums, they'll stick in bonus tracks, but they won't put them at the end. They'll stick them in, track 3, track 5.
Yeah.
And it completely screws up your listening, because you're used to hearing the album on
Yeah,
vinyl in
that's
a
right.
certain running order.
It's good when they keep, say, at least 2 or 3 things if it comes from the same album. I like them to be kept in the same order they were on the album, because at least it then gives you tastes of what the artist meant when the records were made.
And as you said, the album was put together for a reason.
Yeah.
You know, with that particular running order and with the right amount, a certain amount of space between
Yeah,
each track.
yeah.
You know, people put a lot of consideration into those aspects.
Believe it or
of making an
not,
album.
we did.
I know you did.
Yeah, we all did. No,
Yeah,
every
yeah.
artist did, and it's something
Yeah.
that's kind of gone out of the way. You know, anybody can pick the running order now because people can move it around at home.
Right. Tell us about. Let's talk a little bit about those 2 cuts you sent. Like the, you guys sent out initial allotment of CDs to radio, and then you got feedback on 2 particular tracks.
Yeah.
Track 2, which is
Back to
Back to
basics.
basics.
Back to Basics.
Yeah.
Let's talk about a little bit of the development and what went behind the production of that song.
Back to Basics, Elliot Lewis, he wrote that one entirely on his own. And when we heard the demo, the first thing it put me in mind of was a Curtis Mayfield vibe. And he had pretty much copped most of the pre-production stuff that he needed to hear in his demo. It was a real simple one to record because it was spelt out very clearly what needed to be done, but he copped the right thing, and it put us in mind of Curtis, as I say, you know, that kind of tune that he would have done. The title I liked because it was just about what we were doing with this record in general, is getting back to basics, how we record it, how we do things. It's back to the old school method of recording, which is the right one for us. And the song just had a nice, simple message throughout, you know, about getting back together with a loved one or a friend, and had some significance for what people need to do in general. You know, so it covered a lot of bases, I think, that one. Every Beat of My Heart is a soul ballad, traditional soul ballad, dare I say, and it's about the opposite. It's about being away from a loved one. How little time you have, let's make every minute count, and no matter where I am, you're always in my heart, kind of thing. So that's a simple explanation of that one, but that's a true time-tried recipe for ballads, you know.
That particular song, "Every Beat of My Heart," when I heard it, I don't know. Like I said, I've always enjoyed you guys' music, but I was like, I had to stop and think for a second. I said, "It's the Average White Band's album." Okay, because like when I was listening to it, the feel of the song and the delivery of the song, I thought about groups like the OJs.
Yeah.
I thought about the remaining 3 members of the Four Tops singing that song as a tribute song to Lawrence Payton, who
Okay.
passed away.
Yeah.
You know, I was
Yeah.
saying,
Very good.
I was
Yeah.
like, wow, this would be a great song for those 3 guys.
Yeah.
That they could have
Yeah.
sung, because it just affected me that way. It was such a great delivery. And
Well, that could still happen.
That's there's a lot of that's something that I would never have thought about, you know. And there's a different take on the same set of lyrics.
Right.
You know, songs. I like when songs mean different things to different people. The message doesn't have to be one thing, and that's the beauty of the days before videos. You know, because once you've seen a video, that's the only interpretation you'll ever think of for the tune. Whereas everybody used to have their own imaginary interpretation of every great song you ever heard. So we've just come up with 2 different scenarios for the same song.
because listening to the album overall, I mean, who did most of the writing? You did.
Yeah, myself and Elliot, but the guys all shared in quite a few of the tunes. I mean, they put their own stamp on things, and let's not forget that without the band, the feel wouldn't be there, and the reason for that kind of writing wouldn't be there. You know, it's not the kind of writing I would do for somebody else, for example. It's all because of the guys in this group that you tailor it this way, and they contribute most of the work to things like Soul Mine, Living on Borrowed Time. I'm going to say, Do You Really? When we get down to it, there's a lot of band work in there.
Yeah,
you know.
in terms of parts, people
Yeah.
will hear the idea of the
So
song,
they're
and they'll come up with their own parts for
Yeah.
just like we always did in the old days. You know, everyone came up with their own parts for
Yeah.
every song. Pretty
And that's
much.
why the band's always credited as writers on most of the stuff, because they're a huge integral part of the process of writing this kind of material. It doesn't just come from one guy's mind.
Right. Now I asked that because in listening to it, it kind of sounded like it was kind of maybe somewhat solely inspired in a way where it's like maybe you found a new love interest in your life.
Yeah.
In certain songs like track number 4.
Yeah, Every Beat of My Heart. Yeah, yeah.
And then a couple of other tunes as it went through it. Because, and listening to it, I listened to that album, and then right after, I listened to Earth, Wind & Fire's new album. I don't know if you heard that yet, which is really...
I haven't heard the new one yet.
I have to pick it up.
Real good project in the name of love. And it also had the same kind of, a very love kind of oriented message. And their sound, as your sound is also is like in a way of back to basics, like track number 2. So,
well, you know, we're all going through midlife crises.
It could be something to do with it.
You could look at that with these guys and ourselves. You know, the age we're at now. You know, I suppose.
Have you ever?
We're calling a psychologist here, I think. You know?
Have you ever met them or?
Quite recently we met them
out in Vegas.
We went to the show
recently.
in Vegas. They were doing a live TV show, and we went along and met some of the guys afterwards. Great show.
Yeah,
absolutely phenomenal.
Do you guys ever think about doing any work with them or touring or anything?
Well, we have done in the past.
Yeah,
We've done some great shows with them.
Sinbad show, you know.
The Sinbad
'95,
first one.
The first one from St Martin we did with them.
Yeah,
and the OJs.
And the OJs were on that as well. That was a great show. I mean, it's without digressing, that was one of the highlights of our career.
Yeah, tell us a little bit. Give us a little more insight on the whole.
Well, Sinbad called us up, and it turned out that he's a huge fan of ours from the '70s. And the reason being that when he was about 16 and was learning the drums, he came to see us play in Denver, Colorado, at Regis College. And damned if they wouldn't let him in. Nobody would let him in the building, you know. And here's this kid trying to get in to see our sound check or anything, you know. And Steve Ferrone, who was our drummer at the time, opened the stage door, and Sinbad says, "Man, can I get into you?" And he said, "Yeah, come on in, you know. You look harmless enough." So he says, "I'll never forget that." The drummer himself invites me in when all the security guys wouldn't let me in the building. And he stayed, you know, copped the show and everything, and has been a fan ever since. So when he had this idea of putting his personal legends together, he had to include us, and we were totally honoured to do it. We'd never played with the OJs before, you know, we hadn't played with War before, and we'd done a show with Gladys Knight at the Spectrum in Philadelphia before. But most of these people, it was new to us to appear with them in the same bill, and it was just totally wonderful. The weather was great. The weekend was great.
Beautiful.
His hospitality was superb. He's a great compere, great MC, great
fun to be with. Anyway.
Yeah.
It's just, you know, good, clean, wholesome
and
fun.
And we've developed a friendship with him through that, because when we played Chicago just back there in House of Blues in April, he was there at the show, right up front, you know, leading the masses, you
with
know.
the AWB hat on.
So not only do we get to see all the bands we hadn't quite checked out in the past live at their best, we got to be included in that little kind of wall of fame there.
Great, that's excellent. It's I saw a telecast of it on HBO. And it was kind of in and out, so I only caught it in segments.
But it was on enough times that you could actually eventually see the whole thing. I mean, they showed it about 12 times. Yeah.
Right. And he just did it, just finished it this
That's
time
right, in Aruba.
Yeah. You guys are touring presently. Right?
Just starting, actually.
Yes, yeah. We're just back from Europe. We were over there for 6 weeks. So.
Were you playing over there?
Playing over there, yeah. We travelled all over Switzerland, Italy, Austria, Germany, and England. So it was real good good tour. So we're just about to embark on our US tour. Pretty much takes us through to November.
It does. Wow. Well, it's in 2 sections. We're not that mad. We're doing sort of like 5 weeks and taking a couple of weeks to let the brain cool down, and then doing another 4 or 5 weeks.
Okay, so from now until the end of July, say August,
that's it.
Touring?
August we take a little time off,
and
then start again September. Yep. Yeah.
Okay, into some dates.
Him and I'll spend a little time in Scotland in August.
Oh, nice. Your show that was scheduled for here tomorrow night's been cancelled.
It's been postponed. It's going to be rescheduled later in the tour, probably at the end of the tour.
Okay.
I don't know what was going on between the JVC Jazz Festival and some dates. They had messed around with something, and we ended up being the scapegoats that had to lose a date, but they'll make it up later.
Great. Okay. Cool. So, and you're gonna do one night.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're in Buffalo on Thursday night, right?
Yes.
Correct.
This coming Thursday.
Yep.
And Atlantic City on Friday with Cool and the Gang.
Next thing on Friday with Cool again.
Yeah,
So
it's
have
going
you
to
guys
be.
ever worked with him before?
No.
With him?
Well, actually, I did with. We did a little kind of unplugged thing with Daryl Hall a couple of years back up in Boston for a radio station, and they were there doing like a 4-piece thing as well. So Robert and Daryl and I kind of hung out at the bar for a little while afterwards. So he's a really nice guy. We got to know him, and we were talking about the old stuff and how we'd kind of like taken an element from one of their tunes to put in Schoolboy Crush, you know, the bagon, bagon, bon, daga, which originally came from them. And he said, "That's cool." And I said, "No,
Can't get enough of that funky
stuff." That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you know, it's going to be fun doing this show together on Friday.
Cool. Daryl Hall's even doing something new, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
Right.
Doing two things new. He's got a new solo album in the can, which I worked on, and the Hall & Oates record's coming out in August.
Tell us a little about working with him on that project.
Well, he's a great writer. I mean, as you know, he's written so many hits. It's not true, of all kinds. Most of his best ones, I think, are the soulful ones, like Every Time You Go Away and that kind of stuff, as opposed to the pop things. But he is a mine of information about Philadelphia, especially Philadelphia soul music, because his first band, the Temptones, was Kenny Gamble and Leon Huff. So they all worked together when they were kids, and he grew up through that whole Philadelphia scene. And he's always quoting Jerry Blavat, the great knowledgeable wise man of Philadelphia music. It's working with him and all this stuff comes up, I'll say, well, that was so... He'll go, no, man, you're wrong. That was not so-and-so. That was this team that did that. And, you know, it's learning all this stuff from a guy like that, another blue-eyed soul guy. And he's just a very, very talented singer and songwriter. Good to work with.
How many tracks did you work with him on the album, the solo project?
On the solo project, about 8 or 9 altogether, and about 6 or 7 on this new Hall & Oates album.
So you worked on both, or
On both,
on both?
yeah.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
Great. You mentioned the
That's in my spare time.
yeah.
Time off for good behaviour.
You used the expression "blue-eyed soul" just a moment ago. Lisa Stansfield and Swing Out Sister actually performed last night
Yeah?
at Webster Hall.
Ah.
If I'm not mistaken.
I didn't know about that.
Yeah, I heard about it in the 11th hour.
I had a dream about her 2 nights ago. Seriously, I woke up like 2 days ago with a dream about Lisa Stansfield. She was in
Really?
this dream.
Wet or dry?
Hey, I was dry.
Because
Had an umbrella.
Another artist that I thought about.
Yeah.
Listening to your album, and I thought that
We've toyed with the
if
idea
you
of...
to put some of her vocals to you. To the
Well,
music
Yeah,
of the
it's-
band.
the idea has come up.
It
quite
has
a
come
few
up, and
times, you know.
we've
I
not
think it
we've
could
not
be a really great
we've not
project.
connected. You know, it's one of these things that I would like to do. I'd love to work with her.
And
I think she's talented.
she's pretty approachable too. I mean, I had the pleasure of interviewing her about 2 months ago, just before she released her present project. But I think,
Right.
I think the combination of you two guys I think it'd be great.
Yeah, it's
would
funny
be.
you should say that
Yeah.
since we've already.
But it's a while since we thought about it.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
you know, it's funny. She kind of went out of sight for a while and has just come back with this new record. And when we're talking right now about the idea of doing some things on the next album with 1 or 2 other artists, you know. And it's a case of finding out, okay, who would want to record with us and who would be complementary to what we do. And potentially somebody younger than us, so that they can bring in a little bit of new edge, new energy into what you know us boring old so and so's do. It's always nice to have some young energy around, which is what's nice about having the younger team in the band. You know, we've got the two sides here. We're the crusties, you know, and they're the striplings, the youths, the demented youths.
They're in their 30s.
They're in their 30s.
Tell us let's talk about a couple of the classics, because I mean, an all-time favorite is "Pick Up the Pieces." You know, instrumental.
Boy, that's saved a lot of DJs' lives.
Yeah, really.
Really.
Take us to when you guys first. Tell us about when you first produced the track. Tell us about the excitement when you had the initial success of "Pick Up the Pieces," when that whole project, that whole era. Just give us
First thing I remember at Pick Up the Pieces was waking up in this house we were sharing in LA while we were writing all that stuff and hearing this completely upside down guitar riff that Hamish was playing. And it was like, it was so funky. And then the next thing was Robbie joined in with basically a kind of cross between a Purdy and a Clyde Stubblefield groove. And one by one, people just kind of got up out of bed and started picking things up. And within 2 hours, the basic track was together. And then Roger went away and wrote his ba-ba-dee-dup, doo-ba-dee-dup, his bebop melody on top of the thing. And we just thought, well, this is our tribute to James Brown. And the one thing we thought of was, can't wait to get this recorded, and can't wait for the record to come out, and can't wait to go back to London and play it for all play it live at the Marquee for all our pals there.
You know?
That's all. That's as much as and as far as we thought that tune would ever go.
Didn't hear it as a single.
Neither did anybody. Neither did the record company or anybody to begin with.
It's amazing.
Then the phone would ring, and this is after the record was out, and we get. You know, you guys, K something in Seattle's playing this track. We're getting calls from da-da-da-da, and this thing just started happening by magic. You know, it's like DJs all over the country were just unconnectedly picking up on this track.
Yeah, the clubs started
and
playing
the clubs. The beginning of disco was about there, and the dance clubs started playing it of their own accord. You know, people were putting it on, and the floor was filling up. So that's really where we came in, and that's what it was all about.
What when you found out that all this activity was going on with the record, what did you guys think? Like,
I mean,
it was amazing.
Yeah, we still didn't think it was going to be a hit single. We thought, well, this is great, this is cool, you know, something's happening. At least we're getting some attention for the first time in our lives.
And that was in
74.
Yeah, 74, right.
74, and it was still a hot record for a good 10 years.
You know something? It still is.
1974, 1984. I mean, even in radio play.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Even if you put it on now today, people still love it. But I'm saying, Pick Up the Pieces was a record that you heard often on the radio.
Yes.
At least here in the Northeast.
Sure.
Right.
For a good 10 years running.
I would say so.
And every time it came
yeah.
on, it was right there in the pocket.
And if you go anywhere in Europe today, especially anywhere they play acid jazz or any of the funk clubs, and there's a lot of them over there, they're really into that. The young team. They Pick Up the Pieces will be on once a night in all these places, unless it's an out-and-out techno club or something like that. But a groove-oriented dance club, there's Pick Up the Pieces is on somewhere at 2 in the morning. You know.
Tell us a little bit about Cut the Cake. Talk about that a little bit.
Cut the Cake was kind of Robbie and I, to begin with, before we even did the White Album, we had written the basis of Cut the Cake.
I remember rehearsing it in England down at Mitch Mitchell's place.
Yeah, it didn't get finished then. So.
Yeah,
but
the general idea, the basic
it was another James type thing. The two guitar parts, his top chord part, and my skank thing underneath. And it was, Cut the Cake would be a take on Pass the Peas. Or something of that ilk.
Robbie loved Pass the Peas.
Yeah, that's right.
JBs,
and that's why Cut the Cake came into mind.
Yeah.
And that's also where the idea I had for the title of the instrumental being Pick Up the Pieces was something like Pass the Peas. We're trying to get to that thing. And we got to it twice with Pick Up the Pieces and Cut the Cake.
Okay. Your last album, Before Soul Tattoo, what was the name of that?
Aftershock. And that was
1994.
1989.
89.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it came out in 89.
Yeah. Wow. Give us a little background on that. How was the run of that project? Your activity during that time, because there was a space between that project and your older stuff.
5 years,
in
fact.
Currently with Soul Tattoo and that particular project.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about what you guys were doing in between.
Well, the 80s we kind of took off.
Yeah, the band really kind of ground to a halt in 1983. All sorts of problems. But basically, we'd been touring too much, and all the pressures that goes with that. Not to mention recording contracts and all the rest of it.
Well, and a record company that didn't believe in what we naturally did. It's fair to say they wanted us to do pop, and we one thing we can't play is pop. So that kind of helped the band disintegrate. So the 80s was weird, you know. It was a time of unusual and strange music, in my knowledge anyway.
Yeah.
So we did other things. We went about session work, solo stuff. I made a solo album for A&M. I started going to Nashville and LA and places and teaming up with other writers just to learn more about the craft of writing. And Chip Wilson at Track Records in 1988 got hold of us via somebody in New York and said, look, I've got a label out here. I want to do an album with you guys and an album with the Ohio Players to start with.
This was in Seattle.
Yeah, and they were based out in Seattle. So we flew out there, checked out the place. They had a beautiful new studio and everything. So, hey, this is, you know, someone wants us to do it. So Oni, myself, and Roger Ball got back together again. We wanted to do it. The other guys were real busy. Hamish was with McCartney, and Steve was busy as a bee with all kinds of projects. So we went out and got the ball rolling again. And Elliot Lewis joined us. He'd written quite a bit of the stuff on the Aftershock record. We had Alex Lidgerwood come in from Italy, I think he was, or France he was in at the time.
Yeah.
He sings with Santana, a fellow Scotsman, great vocalist. So he came in and did some guest vocals with us. And so we got that album done. And then we had Shaka. She came in and did Spirit of Love and Let's Go All the Way with us on vocals. And Ronnie Laws did some sax things. So it was kind of fun for us being able to have some pals and friends, instead of it being such a strict AWB thing, as had always been the case. This was kind of like, well, the whole entire old band isn't back together again, so let's just have some fun and see what, you know, throw things up and down, see what shakes. We'd one good single, Spirit of Love, and a couple of other decent tracks, but it got the band back on the road. That was the main thing. So from then on, we've been touring in small ways, getting bigger and bigger and bigger, to the extent that in 1994, it was starting to go so well, and the band was all together. We had all the players we wanted, that it's like, now it's time to make a studio record again. One that we can be as proud of as we think we could be of our old records. So that's what led up to the gap between Aftershock, was just touring and, you know, mercilessly woodshedding stuff and rejecting things until we had an album's worth of songs that we thought was good enough for Soul Tattoo.
Cool. Okay. And it's an excellent album again.
Well, thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Really
it's good to hear that. You know, your only reassurance is when you play the stuff live. And now the record's out, it's down to you guys to be the jury, because, you know, we just commit the crime. Did we get away with it?
So just give us a few cities you guys are going to hit in the next couple of weeks. Just tell us where you're going to be.
Buffalo, Atlantic City we've mentioned.
Yeah, Philadelphia.
Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh after that.
We're doing some TV in Philly.
In Philly.
Pittsburgh, yes, Pittsburgh. We're doing Dallas with the Isleys. We've never played with them before. It's going to be an amazing honour to do that. Question is, who's going to do work to do?
Well, we'll be on first, so we could always just do it anyway.
Yeah. Why don't we do it together as an encore? Imagine that.
That would be hard.
That would be
New
good.
Orleans, we're playing New Orleans. We're doing, let me think now, Sacramento. That's going out
New
west.
Orleans,
You know?
Is that with the Essence thing? Or
Yes,
something else?
part of the Essence thing. Our show's at the House of Blues there on this Saturday night, the last night of the Essence Festival. 4th of July, so we'll have fireworks, last night of the Essence, New Orleans.
Many sore heads.
Ooh, a voodoo night.
It's going to be pretty packed down there with a bunch of different artists. The Ohio Players, even another artist that you mentioned that was...
They're part of that as well.
Are in that as well.
It's going to be fun.
Okay. Anything you'd like to add?
Just to anybody who's looking for some funk and a good evening out, you know, we're coming your way, starting now. So if you know we're in the area, come and see us. You will not regret it. We'll give you a good time. Party hardy.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Curtis.